Teammates, we are back once again. If this is your first time listening to the Move Swiftly podcast, welcome to the #1 show on innovative teamwork. Great to have you. Shout out to Podmatch again for linking me up with absolutely incredible people. To my regular listeners, you already know how I get down, how it gets down when you hit the play button on this show. Today we have Francesca Amante, who, as per usual, is someone that is going to come on here and give a transparent, authentic, very vulnerable, very courageous account of a lot of the things that she has lived through in life. And she's doing this to just help you get through the moment, help whoever is willing to listen get through the moment. I mean, Francesca, you are what I like to call a transformational speaker and somebody that pulls courage out of people, because as I listened to your story, I thought of conversations I had with my own mother and my own parents. And my mother, you know, me and my sister grew up as two kids. It was just me and my older sister, right? And my mother lost two babies. She lost two babies before she had my older sister. And she might, I don't even know if I'm got her permission to tell the story, but I'm going to tell it because you had so much courage to tell your story. But she told me one day, she goes, "Look, Ozzy," that was my nickname back then. She goes, "You might not have been here if I had those two babies." And I think about that, and I think about the thing that you so transparently share about how you were born, and you know the things that your parents kind of put on you to be somebody that you tragically, I'll let you tell it, but you tragically lost your older brother. You came into this world and they gave you the girl version of his name, and that put sort of a weight on you to do a lot of things that you're doing now. So I personally have to thank you for your vulnerability and being able to tell that story, because it allows people, not just me, but people to go out and tell their truth and become better at their craft. So, you know, again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for being so transparent when it comes to that. And I'll give you the microphone for a second to just kind of, I know I kind of said a lot in the intro, but speak a little bit more on your background, you know, talk a little bit about how you played in sports and stuff like that. And then we can kind of go from there, because there's a lot of ground that we have to cover here, guys. And there's a whole lot of stuff she has been through, and she just walks around, smile on her face, no resentment, and just keeps them going. So the microphone is yours. Go ahead.
Amazing. Well, first off, thank you, Aswan, for having me on your incredible show. I feel so honored to be here, and thank you for sharing with the audience a little bit about my journey. Exactly as you said, for those of you listeners out there that haven't heard my story before, I'm very much as Aswan said. I was born after a tragic loss. So my brother and sister were very, very close in age. And then I actually now have a 20-year gap with my older sibling. And then my brother, I think, would probably be about 23 years older than me if he was alive today. So very similar that you said, my folks, like any parents, like your mom would have been, you know, when you go through that loss, it's just, there's so many flooding of emotions.
Yeah.
I mean, it was actually the doctor that suggested to my mom and dad, you know, why don't you try having another child and see if that kind of, you know, helps anchor that grief, you know, that you're processing. So they tried for 5 years, and then they finally had me, like you said, gave me the female version of his name. So he was Francesco and I'm Francesca. So, you know, from a very young age, it was very clear to me what a gift life was, because, you know, when I was about 4 years old and I realized why I was brought to the earth, and, you know, had he not passed, they were never going to have another child, especially, you know, so far late into life. But it occurred to me very, very quickly. I think that's why I had such a different, unique lens growing up, and why I really just cherished every moment, every day. And it definitely drove my passion to work as hard as I could, both in all of the athletic sports I was in addition to my schooling, was because I was like, oh my gosh, like I literally get to live this day because someone else doesn't exist anymore. Like that was such an interesting concept for me to grasp, especially at that age. So I was actually just having this conversation yesterday, and we were talking about like an empathetic lens and having that depth of empathy for people around us. And I was asked the question, you know, why did I have that depth of empathy from such a young age? And I just think I didn't go to school like most kids did. Most of them were excited about their new backpack and their toys at home. And I was looking at, you know, who was left out, who felt like they didn't belong. And I was trying to, you know, seek out those people and helping them feel like they belonged and they had that sense of feeling seen, heard, and loved. And I mean, most people would think that's crazy for a 6-year-old or an 8-year-old to think that way, but that was kind of the progression. And then to answer your second question, as one, that kind of translated into my athletic years. So my folks, ironically, ended up putting me in quite a few different sports, competitive figure skating, every genre of dance, be it ballet, tap, jazz, lyrical, modern. I was in swimming, I was in piano. And I think they were hoping or thinking, like most kids, you put them in a various amount of sports and then they're good at one or they stick to one. Most kids are kind of, they're happy to play and kind of, they'd rather not be getting up at 5 a.m. to be at a cold ice arena. But
Yeah.
I think because partially my brain went to like the thought of I am so lucky to get to do these sports. Like I don't have to, but I get to.
Yes.
And I think because there was I think a form of my brain that went into the perfectionist mindset of I need to do everything in my power to prove to them that I'm worthy of being here after a loss. So I
Yes.
worked very hard at all the sports, and then the result ended up being that I ended up excelling at all of them because I just worked so hard despite anything that came my way. And I'm very grateful for it. It gave me the courage to and the discipline and the resilience to do many things in my adult life. But I'm sure you'll ask more questions in that regard. But hopefully that answers those couple
Yeah,
first.
the one thought that really does come to mind, because sports, I'm always an advocate and always have been on record saying on multiple occasions, sports teaches the lessons that life teaches. Sports
Yeah.
teaches life, all right? And the one thing I actually do kind of, well, I'll say struggle with or ponder on many different occasions is if I was, and I played football from 7 all the way to 22, like you, was incredibly into it. I wanted to be, I was like a perfectionist, wanted to be great at it. It was what got me up in the morning. In fact, my mother would use the fact that I wanted to play in the NFL to wake me up at 5 a.m. every morning to go work out and things like that. So what I ponder, and this could be, I would love to get your thoughts on this as we're looking at it on this part of life, because I teach now and I'm picturing that 6-year-old girl you, that 8-year-old girl you, the young ladies that I teach every single day, and how some of them may be struggling. You just never know what's going on with the person when they may react to my aggressive teaching style and they start crumbling. I start to have to hold myself back because I'm thinking like, oh, like, you don't know what's going on at home. I'm thinking like, when you are excelling in sports, do your parents well, I guess you're an adult now, you can sort of speak to this now. Do you sort of look at a kid and say they're ready for the information? Because when my mother told me what you told me, I was already kind of in the public. They knew my name as a football player and all that. And I'm thinking, I guess I would have to confirm it with her, but do you think that your parents told you this because you were ready to hear it, and they knew that, look, I see her on the field, I see, or not just the field, but everything that she's doing, and she's ready to bear this weight because I see the potential in her and I'm not trying to put any pressure on it? Because you did express sort of later on in life how there was maybe some tension of some of the pressure that you felt when it comes to being the replacement. I mean, that's some heavy shit to carry. Look, my brother gets in an accident and all of a sudden I got to be the person, but I'm also excelling in sports. My parents may have told me this because I'm ready, I'm prepared, I'm going to be speaking in front of thousands and thousands of people, I'm going to accelerate as a realtor, I'm going to do all of these things. You were like, ready to go. So your thoughts on that? I know that was a loaded question, but just take it away.
I appreciate it, Aswan. It's a great question. I would say I don't even know, and actually that kind of brings me to why I wrote the children's book that I did.
Yeah,
I don't know if my parents actually knew or thought out or processed when would be a good time or if I would be ready for it. I think it just, I mean, I can kind of remember how it all happened and the moment that my mom told me. But it's interesting because I think that I don't know if any parent really knows how to do that or how to share that information with a child similar to your mom. I don't
Yeah.
know if they even know when the right time is. I just remember I was maybe 4 or 5 years old sitting on the staircase, and I remember my mom was on the phone with someone, and I think I had probably asked her something along the lines of like, oh, who was that?
Mm-hmm.
And she had shared with me, oh, that's your older sister. And I was like, oh. And because I kind of grew up with this mentality of I'm an only child because that's all that you know.
Yeah.
My sister was already married and out of the house, so she was over 20 when I was born.
Right.
And nonetheless, I think it was just one of those things where then she said, you had a brother and this is kind of what happened. And then we
Right.
had you and you're this ray of sunshine.
Mm-hmm.
I think what's interesting though, Aswan, is that they never distinctly put it to me that you are a replacement or you're here to fill the void.
Right.
But I think what's interesting is that if we don't create the conditions for clarity,
Mm,
we are kind of just fills in those gaps. It's just
mhm.
human nature, right? So
Yeah,
I think as a young girl, I was like, oh, wait a second. So he passed away, then you had me, you named me after him. Like I was the one that filled in all of those gaps. And
right.
I just remember, there'd be certain celebrations where they'd have a cake and they're like, Francesca, you're a ray of sunshine, or you're this, you're that. And as a young girl, I mean, they never intended on this, but I just felt like I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm supposed to be this
Heavy.
ray of sunshine.
Yeah,
I'm supposed to be taking away their pain.
right.
So, that kind of started, this behavioral pattern as the years went on. I've had to unlearn all of these behavioral patterns now, but as a young child, people pleasing was a big thing. If I
Yes.
saw that they were sad or mourning, grieving, whatever it may be, I
Mhm.
was trying everything from making a new dance routine to hoping that my grades from school would cheer them up, whatever it was. I was just trying to mitigate that
Mhm.
and help them navigate their emotions, which really wasn't my responsibility. But
Yes.
as one, it would have been when I was like 19 years old. I was a youth leader for a group of youth. Essentially, my goal with them was to help them get through whatever that they were facing.
Mhm.
A lot of them came from, some difficult family backgrounds, and it was just one of my passions to be there of support for them. So
Yeah.
we happened to be at this conference this one weekend, and I was sitting in the audience with all of these youth, and all of a sudden the speaker on stage had said something. Till this day, I don't know what hit me, but I
Mhm.
just started to cry, and one of the young girls were like, oh my gosh, are you okay? And I didn't really know what the problem was. And they
Mhm.
knew a little bit about my story, but not a whole lot. And this one girl, I'm now friends with her till this day. Her name's Becca. And I
Mhm.
always give her the credit. She looked at me and she says, I just feel like someone up there is trying to tell you you don't need to be Francesco and Francesca, but being you is enough.
Yeah.
And I
Mhm.
remember kind of looking at her and I was like, what did you say?
Uh,
And interestingly, it seems like such a simple concept, but it was so profound because no one had ever looked at me and said that.
Yeah.
And I remember getting home and telling my folks, I was like, oh my gosh, like
Mhm.
this young girl came up to me and shared this with me. And whether you guys realize it or not, I have to admit, this is what I've been carrying for all these years. I've been doing X, Y, and Z to literally hope, hopefully,
Yeah.
make you happy. But
Yeah.
I'm now gonna start doing things for me. And actually at that point, that's when I actually kind of reevaluated everything in my life. There were certain components that I was contributing to that I decided not to anymore because I wasn't doing it for me and it wasn't genuine. And I had to reevaluate. So I really have so much gratitude for that catalyst moment in my life.
Yeah, and it's amazing how subtle these moments do happen. That's why I open the show explaining to especially my regular listeners, we're here to get you through the moment because it's the moments, it's going to be the moments that you stack upon stack, stacking those moments. That's what's going to create the reality for you. And one of the things actually similar to you that helps me process it to this day is a book. You mentioned your book, but I was reading a book titled Letters to a Young Brother by Hill Harper, and he opens the book by saying as a young person, you are a new and improved vehicle, regardless. And every single opportunity I have to speak on that, I like to tell young people because you're young. That's the beauty of being your age and being youth, a person that is not adulting, quote unquote. Be the new and improved vehicle. And even let's say my mother told me that just because she wanted that weight, at least I can still be that new and improved vehicle, and I don't have to necessarily go hunt my or have any resentment whatsoever to the people that love me as unconditionally as my mother does. There's no resentment at all. There's just me being a new improved vehicle because I'm young. So those are the things that help me sort of process it. And I was around, I want to say what 20, it was around young, early 20s when I read that book. And that brings me to the next thing I want to talk to you about is the fact that you go through school, you go through grade school and all that. And I'm not, do you like just choose to go to college, or do you just, hey, wake up, you're married one day? I know you mentioned getting a divorce at 20 and then getting your realty license, like kind of fill in the blanks a little bit when you're able to, all right, grade school's over. Now Francesca is in the real world. I'm an adult and it ain't gonna be about no pity parties now. We're in the real world. We got to figure some shit out. So,
Yeah.
walk us through that and how that transition was.
Absolutely. I would say, I mean, I graduated fairly early from school. I was already the youngest in my grade,
Uh-huh.
because my birthday is like, December 31st, very last
No
day of the
kidding.
year.
Capricorn out here?
Yeah, there you
I'm
go.
January 8th. Another
Very
Capricorn,
nice. I
folks.
like
Another
it.
Capricorn. Let's do it.
I love it. So yeah, absolutely. So you understand. But yeah, being a December baby, I was always the youngest in my class to begin with.
Yeah.
But because of that, my parents didn't hold me back when I started grade school. So yeah, I just was, thrown in with all of the older kids. I graduated 6 months early, so I would have been 16 when I graduated. So
Mhm.
my intention originally, there was different options that I had, Disney on Ice, with competitive figure skating. I got offered if I wanted to do that.
Right.
At the time, it wasn't something that was in my wheelhouse of what I wanted to do in terms of my lifestyle, generally
Mhm.
speaking. But yeah, when I was 16, essentially the thought process was that I was like, okay, I'll go travel. We have family in Australia. I was like, I'll go and travel there for 6 months, or I could go visit family in Italy, see a bit of the world, and then I'll come back and then start school. Around that time, my dad had got diagnosed with prostate cancer, which was, of course, like it's a better cancer to get than, obviously some, unfortunately. And he thankfully today is in really great health, and the doctors were very quick and smooth in terms of their processing of all the different procedures. But, at that time, I think it occurred to me, I was like, life is really short, and going away for 4 years just really wasn't exactly what I wanted to do. So staying close to home was more in my mindset at that particular time. So it was around that time that I got offered a position. So I don't know if you know the company of Clinique, but it's like a skincare, it's Clinique Laboratories. It's like a skincare company essentially. But I
Okay.
had got an offer to be to work with that particular company. And I remember originally I was like, oh, that's not exactly like what my skill set is. But long story short, within 6 months, I ended up being counter manager. So I was like the 17-year-old manager, like department manager of the company. And
Yeah.
then I just continued to work my way up. I was traveling to Vancouver every month for these beautiful conferences and trainings.
Oh,
And
okay.
very quickly, I was working alongside, 30, 40-year-olds. And here I was, a 17, 18-year-old.
Okay. Can't even buy.
I don't think anyone really noticed, to be
Right.
honest. I've
Right.
always been a little bit of an old soul. So I think most people just thought I probably was in my early 30s. But I was with that company for several years. At the same time, I got my national certification with Skate Canada. So I, had the coaching, world kind of integrated into that. But
Oh.
when I was about 20 years old, that's when I decided I was like, I want to invest in a property of some sort. Had my very first house. So it was right around that time that I was in a relationship at the time. And, that actually was the person that I went on to marry years ago. Wonderful human being. I think it was just one of those things that not a lot of us know what we want or who we are at 19 or 20 years old.
Exactly.
So as much as I'm so grateful for that experience, because I would not be the partner or the person or the professional that I am today without those lessons learned.
Amen.
But in the midst of that, I definitely very quickly got to see what that life would look like. And
Yeah.
around the time that I got my first home, the realtor that it was purchased from reached out to me, and she's like, I want you to work with me. And that was kind of the catalyst to a 10-year, from about the time I was just over 20 years old to concluding my real estate journey at 30 years old. I went on to have my own real estate company, got my license. I worked on major development projects. Absolutely loved the industry for various reasons. But yeah, I mean, I would say as one, me even at that time, so young in my life and entering into that relationship and journey, and then having, the divorce and everything happen after that, a lot of that I recognize I was still in the sense of um, doing a lot of the things that I was doing for my mom and dad. So it's really beautiful now to see how much they've grown and evolved, and how much I've grown and evolved, and how much our relationship has grown and evolved, because now with the partnership that I'm in, not only am I the version of myself that I need to be in a successful relationship, but it's amazing what a beautiful life you can create and co-create when you're doing it for the right reasons, right? So I'm so grateful for that partner years ago in my life, and you know, like so many beautiful memories. But at the same time, it definitely taught me everything that I needed to know. And at the same time, I think it's sometimes in the things that are uncomfortable to talk about or uncomfortable to go through that we learn the most about ourselves. I know that during that time, you know, I obviously having an Italian family, not my mom and dad so much. I don't find them to be judgmental. They're very accepting and loving, and I'm very grateful and fortunate for that. But I found that a lot of our Italian relatives, I saw a very different side of a lot of people when I went through my divorce. They're wonderful humans, and I get that their judgment, I don't think, comes from them. I think it's just a generational thing that's passed down that
They're conditioned by, yeah. It's
exactly.
something that's conditioned in a lot of people that they don't do the work to get out of it.
Absolutely. So, you know, that was an interesting journey for sure. But now in my later years, I have so much compassion for all of them because I know that they weren't judging me. They're just, they
Exactly.
were taught one way. And when someone goes against that teaching, you know, how can they not have those,
A
you know,
knee-jerk reaction.
that love, right?
Knee-jerk reaction, yes.
Absolutely.
The
So
question I really do want to get your thoughts on and have you, because we actually just 2 episodes ago had shout out to Jenny all day Towson, but she caught her husband having an affair. And this
okay.
was during a lot like you, during a really the highlight of her business, and things were moving well and she was so focused on her business, but they're still together to this day because she started to look within, very much like you just said. She looked within and said, you know what, I wasn't there for him. I was focused on my business, and these are the things I can improve on myself. And once the episodes, that's not out yet, but once you hear it, you'll realize how much growth that she's been able to grow from, and the resentment is no longer there. And I remember telling her on the show, look, that resentment gets you nowhere. That resentment, you put off an energy with that resentment that does absolutely nothing good for you and the young people that you're looking to serve. So I want to
Absolutely.
kind of ask you a similar question is, what would you say led to your ability to not be resentful? What would you say led to your, because I could see you being in, I could see a lot of ladies, not just you, but everyone being in a situation of feeling, why me? Why me? Okay. Parents did this to me, so I'm going to, shack up with this guy, have this, have this. They could be something, and you had money too. You weren't even in a situation where you needed him to, depend on you
Yeah.
financially or anything like that. So there can be a lot of just angry bitterness that you put off to the world, but you clearly don't walk around and have that mentality. You just called your ex-husband an incredible human being. All right, you called your ex-husband an incredible human being, and I am commend you on your ability to move beyond whatever the situation was, because it's not important, it's not serving you in the long haul. What do you think led, can you kind of walk us through, what do you think led to that ability to do that now?
Absolutely. I mean, I would say first and foremost, I just want to clarify, like in my personal situation, there was like I'm very grateful that there wasn't any cheating or anything like
Yeah,
that on
it
either.
wasn't, that's what I'm saying. And that's why, well, like, even when I told Jenny, I'm like, that's a lot. I could, a lot of, for you to really grow from that, I could
Yeah.
respect that so many ways. Because there's a lot of ladies I know would have been like, man,
I
right,
commend her, right?
right.
For me, it was more so, you know, I'll put it this way.
Yeah, go ahead.
What ended up ending the relationship actually was that at that particular time in my partner's life, there was so much weight on him getting this dream job that he had.
Mm-hmm,
And when he didn't get it the first, the second, the third, the fourth time, a lot of that, you know, the expression, if you're not talking it out, you're acting it out.
mm-hmm.
That started to happen through certain things. And I started to recognize that he was just very unhappy because so much weight was put on. I think for him, he was like, okay, if I get this job, then I'm going to be enough, right? You know, and so
Exactly. That is, I mean,
when I was able to,
I gotta pause you on this, because
yeah,
I gotta speak to this for the men's perspective. It's
yeah,
not you. It's a separate thing, guys. I get it. I am one. Listen, I think about my business 24 hours a day, 365 days.
yeah,
My dad was, I mean, he has been in his business. We're going on right now. I'm recording this. And I'm getting ready to go to a family reunion in Trinidad. And I'm reading messages about my dad making sure his architectural firm is together because he wants to do work when he's on vacation. Okay. I get how much our identity is wrapped up in our jobs, but we cannot let it get to the point where it starts to affect our personal lives. We gotta have that barometer. We gotta be in a situation where we're starting to see what is happening to our families, to our personal lives, and all the things that we care about. You've got to find that balance. I'm telling you, I can just stop the episode here and just go on hours and hours upon example about this specific situation. I'm telling you from the heart, don't let it be that thing that starts to affect your personal life. Okay, we're back to you. I just have to make sure I made that point. So go ahead.
It's a beautiful, and I think it applies to everyone, because
Yes.
as I got to witness that years ago,
Mhm.
it was teaching me that I was like, wow, like it's almost, I reflected it back to my own life where I was like,
Mhm.
oh my God, for so many years, I literally put my whole identity on filling the void of my brother. And when I realized I couldn't do that, that is kind of a blow to our self-esteem, because
Yeah.
we attach to something that gives us value. So
Yeah. Oh, man.
nonetheless,
Come on now. Tell,
that
preach,
was kind of,
bro. Yes, you're
yeah,
right.
that was kind of how that all happened. But it's what's so beautiful about it is that where he is today, when we were able to reunite years later, it was several years later that we reunited and got to have a lovely dinner.
Mm.
One of the things that he got to share with me was, he was like, I have found my happiness within myself. It doesn't matter what job I have or where I live. I'm
Mhm.
happy. I'm like, that is all I've ever wanted for you. And I was able to say to him, I said, don't settle, because you're an incredible human and you're an incredible partner. And he
Yeah.
now has a beautiful, like an incredible human being.
Yeah.
And he's doing a job that he absolutely loved. It wasn't the original dream job. It's a different dream job, but I'm so
Mhm.
happy for him. So anyways, now fast forward to where I am. I
Mhm.
guess I would say that the reason I wasn't going down the path of resentment is that it's really hard for me to resent something that made me the person I am today. I am so grateful for every single part of that journey. And I mean, I look at the type of partner I am today now.
Mhm.
Had I not been able to reflect back and go, and don't get me wrong, I was a very, very good partner.
Mhm.
I commended myself on how supportive I was,
Yep.
and just like unconditionally loving. But
Mhm.
there's certain things that naturally we just grow and evolve in. And I look at the way that I'm able to, take feedback, and I think that we live in a world now where we're not as scared of failing, or we're not as scared of, like, if someone has feedback for us, even in the business world. I mean, I remember as a business professional, if I ever got feedback that I could do something better, I was like, oh my gosh, I've completely failed them. Whereas
Mhm.
now I instantly ask, I'm like, what can I do better? How can I be better next time? I'm
Yes.
constantly asking my partner, we ask each other this back
Yes.
and forth, how can I show up for you this week? And
Mhm.
it might be in the most strangest ways. And I'm like, oh yeah, I can do that, no problem.
No.
Sometimes we never know what people need. It might just be that, bringing them a cup of coffee in the morning before a long string of meetings. We never know how we can show up better. But I think it's just that willingness to take that feedback, and know
Mhm.
that we don't always get it right, type of thing. So
Yes.
it
And
just comes with time.
you have to. I want to make sure I mention this as well. You have one of, in my opinion, the greatest philosopher of all time, Mr. Jay-Z Sean Carter Combs, once said, "You won't heal from what you don't reveal. You won't heal from what you don't reveal." And your breakthrough into speaking speaks directly to that quote, because you were in a point now, and again, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you're working as a realtor, you're working with these families, you're able to kind of, especially, given the situation you lived through, you're able to counsel these people. You're more than just a real estate agent or more than a realtor, but you're having conversations with people that are about to make a purchase on a home, given a situation so you can speak to them from personal experience, which is another business lesson for you guys out there. When you get into business, give your personal touch to your clients. But I guess, I don't know, something hits you and you decide, look, I'm going to take this Instagram, I'm going to open this Instagram app, I'm going to put it all out there. I'm just going to hit the share button. And before you know it, you're speaking on stages with, TEDx speakers and profound speakers. And you're saying to yourself, wait, what am I even doing here? Yet you actually you got people off their seats, you got people emotional, and now you got your own thing rolling. So go ahead and kind of explain it. I know I touched on it a little bit, but I want to give you the opportunity to explain it, kind of fill in the blanks of what I got wrong, what I may have left out. So go ahead.
Thank you, Aswan. I appreciate that. Yeah, it was interesting because you know, kind of getting out of that divorce era.
Yeah.
You know, it was kind of a taboo thing to even talk about, especially with my Italian relatives. It was
Oh yeah.
not
Listen,
that people
I grew up,
openly shared,
I
right?
went to school at Stony Brook University right there in Long Island. So there's a lot of Italian Americans, a lot of, this was around the time Jersey Shore was out. So I know how I'm Caribbean, so but I know how y'all get down in that family. I used to have a
Love
lot
it.
of conversations, man. It's great. It's good times, but I know exactly what you mean when you say that.
I bet, I bet. Yeah, so I mean, it was kind of a taboo subject. It
Yeah.
wasn't something that people wanted to talk about. And this one day, like you said, I decided I didn't have a massive Instagram following. I maybe had 600 followers.
Yeah.
Like it, you know, it was nothing major, but I was, you know what? I'm gonna share and see, you know, what I don't even know if I knew what the outcome would be. I just wanted to share. I talked a little bit about my brother's passing. I talked a little bit about the divorce, all in the mind of gratitude, what I've learned from it, the grace I've learned to give people, all of that. And long story short, I get a call from a faculty member from University of British Columbia
Mhm.
at their Okanagan campus in Canada, near where I was living. And yeah, essentially they were like, Francesca, we just read your post. We were brought to tears. We need to meet you. And I was like, oh, okay, like really? And so they were explaining to me essentially along the lines of, because the post was all with the basis of gratitude as a whole,
Yeah.
they were like
Wasn't
doing
angry.
this.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And they were doing this big gratitude project speaking event. And they're like, we're going to have all these speakers. We want you to come speak. And I'm sure you've heard this. I mean, share this story
Mhm.
on one of my videos, but I pretty much was like, I'm not a speaker. No, like you have the wrong person. They're like, trust us, Francesca. So I met up with them. And long story short, I'm sitting there and I was so gracious. I was like, look, I'm so grateful that you thought of me, but truly, like I will let you down. I've never spoken on a stage before.
Right.
And I asked them, I said, okay, out of curiosity, who else is speaking? And they're like, well, we have Mike Shaw, a TEDx speaker, and
Yeah.
we have Joshua Duick. He was a Paralympic gold medalist that was on the Ellen DeGeneres show. And I, even at that point, I was like, I have to stop you. This is going to be a train wreck if I get on that stage. And
Now,
they're
did
like,
you like
trust.
were you practicing a speech at all, or is it just like did they
I
fly?
didn't even practice a speech as one.
What
That's the
is
crazy
this?
part.
So it's like, yo, I'm just gonna
I
go
just
and wing
bought, so I agreed. I said, okay, if you are that sure,
it.
but don't say that I didn't tell you so. So
Right.
I got there, they all speak, I get up on stage. And like I said, there was nothing prepared. I just spoke from the heart.
Uh-huh.
And all of a sudden I'm watching the audience and I'm like, oh my gosh, they're all crying. And like everyone's moved to tears. And I'm like, and there was this piece, Oswan, when I had the microphone in my hand, I'm standing on the stage, and it was a fairly big audience. I'd say there was about 200 people there, so it was a good size.
Mhm.
And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, I know that I'm getting my real estate license. I know I'm doing this, 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 but I've never felt more at peace or more at home or more in this presence of knowing this is exactly what I meant to do with my life. It became so clear. So that was such an interesting phenomenon to me. And I mean, I remember afterwards, the directors came up to me. They're like, we told you, like, we told you
Uh-huh.
that you were meant to do this. So
Yeah.
I think it's just a testament, and it's not about the speaking engagement. It's not about this or that. It's a reminder to anyone in the audience that when you show up and you're vulnerable, you speak with courage and you just share a piece of you that perhaps you never felt comfortable to share before.
Mhm.
We instantly think, I remember when I posted that, I think my mom called me and she was like, it's a little you know, bold of you to share
Yeah,
all of this,
I've gotten calls like that from my father. Don't
right?
worry, I already know what you're talking about, man. It's like, hold up,
Right?
you know,
Yeah.
you get a
And
little, you
so
getting on there. I'm like, hey, man, this is the business I'm in. So go ahead.
yeah. And here's the thing, as one is that I remember saying to her, and it wasn't anything out of judgment. She was just more so curious as to
Mhm.
how I had the courage to share.
Yeah.
And I just remember saying to her, I'm like, even if one person reading that post is positively impacted,
Uh-huh.
I know that it was meant to be.
Mhm.
And it was the catalyst to my speaking career, but
Mhm.
also to, like, I mean, followers really don't matter. I really, really believe that. At the same time, though, I'm just going to share this. I have just over 4,300 followers today, and
Mhm.
that all occurred over the last like 4 or 5 years, right?
Mhm.
I look at that and I think to myself, that was just a catalyst and a ripple effect of one or two people at that time reached out to me going, oh my gosh, I needed to hear that today. I'd make another post. 10 people are all of a sudden reaching out to me going, I'm going through a divorce. I'm going through this. I just went through a loss. can you help me navigate this? I'm like, yeah, of course I can.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the beautiful part of it. It's kind of like you, one day you woke up and decided, I want to start a podcast because I want to have even one more person out there, one more human being, one more leader be positively impacted by the stories that you and these other leaders are going to share. That's so beautiful to me, right? So I commend you as one, and I'm so glad that you're doing this because you're giving so many incredible people, including yourself, a platform, an avenue to have somebody out there in the audience today that's going to listen to this or listen to whatever episode you recorded yesterday that is going to go as one. I can't even describe to you, and I don't know why, but I needed to hear exactly what was said. And I just think, like, what a gift that we can give on this earth,
1000%, man. The point about you finally feeling at home when you're on stage is something that really struck a major chord with me, because this very show was started because I was a regular member at Toastmasters, and I would constantly give speeches, and I wanted to perfect my craft because I knew for me to do what it is I wanted to do, I had to get over the whole public speaking stuff. I had to figure it out. I knew I had a great message, but I needed like honest critique and people to really rip me apart. And when I was getting that positive feedback from vulnerable things I was sharing, there was this virus you might have heard of that it was called coronavirus, the COVID virus. So I had all these speeches prepared and ready to roll. And then I was like, all right, I gotta get them out. And that's how this actual show started. And that was 4 years ago now. We're approaching 5 years ago. So the point about, finally finding your place. And one of the things I remember actually telling them during those Toastmasters days is the two most important days in your life is when you're born and when you figure out why. All right. So at that point, when you figure out your why, you have total strangers in tears over your story. At some point, you decide, hey, I'm gonna eventually leave real estate and just focus on Alamonte Speaks. I'm going to give other people a platform. I'm going to do a lot of great things, and it's going to be all centered around speaking. I'm going to write a book. I'm going to make sure I'm touching as many people as I possibly can with my story. Walk us through that process and how you're now able to do it full time and stuff like that, because that can be a challenging part, given that there are a lot of thought leaders out there, a lot of people that are now out there that are calling themselves thought leaders, but they don't want to be, they don't want to put too much out there and stuff like that. I think you're going to help a lot of people in regards to how they can build their businesses from a kind of a thought leadership standpoint.
Absolutely. I would say, it was moments like that where I got asked to speak on a stage unexpectedly, and then that one thing led to another, even in the junior chamber. So I've been a member of the Junior Chamber International for several years now. I've sat on their national board for 4 years now. And it was even through, the year of 2020, despite the fact that a lot of the competitions ended up being on Zoom. But I remember moments where, I won locally, then I won regionally, then I won nationally. And then I remember when I went to Conference of America.
These are speaking competitions, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right,
like
okay.
an effective
to make sure people knew that.
And it was
they might have thought
like
you were going back to figure skating days. So like,
fair enough. Yeah, like in the speaking world, that was so intriguing to me, because when I went to Conference of Americas, and I remember there was 15 international competitors, they were speaking 4 or 5 different languages. And I remember when I won the top 3 of them, and then I was the world runner-up, I was like, wait a second, I think it started to click to me that, and I'm not saying I speak extraordinary at all, and that's definitely not the case. I have so much to improve on, but there was obviously something not necessarily about my technical performance, but more so the feeling, the empathy, perhaps the emotion that people felt through my speeches that was landing. I think that's what started to click to me. I was like, I might not be the most technical speaker. I've never gotten professional training. I would love to go into Toastmasters one day. But I think it occurred to me very, very quickly in that process that I was like, there's obviously something about my message that people are needing to hear. If this is a continuing thing that, I walked into all those competitions expecting to not, I wasn't expecting to win. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, okay, this is unique to me. So as that carried on, and I think my confidence started to build in that world, I was still, of course, working full time in real estate. I had a large 103 lot subdivision, like a development, and very, very grateful for the 5 years that I got to work on that project alone. But it started to occur to me that I was, especially at the end of 2022. So this is moving in, this is not long ago, funnily enough, but the entire year of
It's not at
2023,
all.
no, the entire year of 2023 specifically, there were certain things that I was experiencing in my personal life that with some of the people in my, let's call it in my orbit, that it was creating the conditions for a lot of, I don't know, I was not the happiest I've ever been in my life. And I was trying to be so grateful and just be like, no, we've got this, let's keep pushing along. And long story short, as one, I realized at that time, I was like, I'm going to start doing these beautiful events and I'm going to bring people together, not only because I wanted to give back to an amazing charity or, you know, bring people together in the community, but I realized that I was like, okay, if I am going through X, Y, and Z, I can sit here and, you know, say, woe is me, or I can go, you know what, I'm going to turn this pain into something really beautiful. And if I'm not feeling happy in this particular part of my life, I'm going to build on that and use that as an opportunity for me to bring other people together that may also be struggling with, like, for me, and I'll kind of clarify what it was. I was in a relationship where both that person and his mom, when they had moved into my house, it turned into a situation where they were not the kindest, and it just started to take a toll on my mental health.
Wait, this is your house?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, we're gonna leave it at that. We're gonna take you down that road. We're gonna keep it over. We're gonna take you down that road. We're gonna stay professional on that one because I'm gonna just leave that one alone. That one is for off recording conversation. Go ahead.
Exactly, right. So in the midst of that, and quite frankly, just and I take ownership on the fact that
and that's what's lovely about it. You know, again, listeners, you get everything. As much as she could have blamed somebody else, I take ownership. That's me, and that's how you move forward, folks. You don't move forward by blaming people that do you wrong or blaming the bullshit people out there. You move forward by figuring out what role did I play in the situation. Let me own it, and then I'm gonna step and move forward. That's what gets respect. That's what gets you on shows. That's what gets you booked. That's what gets you the clients. That's what gets your business. You got to do it. All right. People do a lot of shitheads out there, a lot of shitty people out there that are going to take advantage of you in so many different ways. But you got to figure out, what did I do? What did I allow? And let's move forward. That's what sports teaches. And that's why I'm such an advocate for young people getting involved in sports, because it goes right back to your figure skating days. You fall your ass falls on the ice. Okay. Get your ass up. And we go roll again. I'm not going to coddle you. I'm not going to ask you if you need a boo-boo. Get your ass up right now and let's roll. So go ahead.
Absolutely. Oh, and that was exactly it. As one, I can reflect back and go, I allowed them to take advantage of me. I allowed them to mistake my kindness for weakness. And am I grateful for the kindness that I displayed for 2 years? Absolutely. Am I grateful I had the courage to walk away? Yes. So we have to take ownership for how we show up and how the way that we show up affects all the different ripples in the world, right? So nonetheless, that was kind of the catalyst to me doing a lot of those events, was that when I came home, I used to, my home has always been a solace, a beautiful, happy place. And when I would come home, it didn't feel like that anymore.
Yeah.
So I was like, no, I'm going to spend more of my time in my community. I'm going to give to others. And maybe there's other people out there that are going through a various amount of situations where I can give them a light and a hope, whatever that looks like. So that's kind of how those big Amante Talk speaking events started. I started with large ones. And then I started doing like more intimate style events where I would bring, like, say, 20 women together, and it would be all about empowerment and uplifting, and then, you know, going back to the large events. But as the time went on, I just executed one recently in June where I had the honor of featuring a USA TEDx speaker, and then also a Canadian TEDx speaker, and another, I guess she's like a coach. She's worked with Tony Robbins for many years. And I felt so grateful to be able to provide a platform.
What was her name?
Pardon?
What was her name? The Tony Robbins.
Her name is Jenny McKinney. Incredible human. Yeah. And
I've had other Tony Robbins coaches on the show. I was wondering if it was the same.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. I think she's worked with his team for about 15 years now. So incredible human.
He doesn't let a lot of people around him, so that's why I figured. Yeah, he's tough. I went to the UPW around the time this show started, and that's a level right there. So
right. I love that. So, Yeah, I mean, and I think that's why I continue those events as one, because as the time went on, I mean, even recently, I had a friend of mine come up to me sharing with me that she's been diagnosed with a certain disease, and she was just in tears. And she's like, Francesca, your speech was exactly what I needed to hear. Like, I didn't know I needed that today. That's the wins. Those are the moments where I'm like, I am exactly where I'm meant to be doing.
Yes.
I'm exactly what I'm meant to be and doing what I'm meant to be doing. So
Right.
that's kind of evolution. Now we're, what, about a year and a half of doing these events. And, I obviously would love eventually to have an actual event team. Right now, I'm the one that coordinates the events. I do the decorating, I do all of the planning, the management, the whole thing, but it brings me so much joy. And then to answer your other question, when I was doing a lot of these events, I was still full-time in my real estate project. And it occurred to me very quickly that not everybody understands why I love to do these. So even my developers that I worked with in real estate, incredible humans, but they're very, they're used to realtors just doing their one thing. They're just realtors.
Yeah.
So I think that it was a bit of a foreign concept for them to be like, well, what do you mean in your spare time you're doing these speaking events? It was not something that we really saw eye to eye on. And it just got to the point where, I was working 7 days a week, morning till night on that project. And as much as it brought me so much joy, and for 5 years, I mean, when I left, we maybe only had like 6 lots left. I was the one that sold all of them with the developers.
Right.
I realized when my time was done, I was like, you know
Yeah.
what? I'm so grateful for this, but this is not bringing me joy and fulfillment anymore. And speaking on stage and being able to be a light to other people, that was where my purpose was. So there was a series of events that kind of happened, and right around the same time, I think this is really what I want to hone in on for your audience, Aswan, is the fact that there's so many things in our life that we do that are out of comfort, are out of, we know the result, the outcome.
You know the result, right?
But at that time in my life, and it wasn't long ago, I think it was September, I gave my notice to the development on September the 5th, because for a lot of reasons, it was not serving me in a positive way. And number two, about 4 or 5 days later after that, I ended my relationship. And, most people would be like, oh my gosh, Francesca, that's huge. Like the basis of your career. And I decided to end my real estate license. I ended that relationship. And a lot of people were like, oh my gosh, like, how did you have the courage to do that? But what was so beautiful about it is that literally in that span of time, I ended up, I guess, reuniting with somebody that I have had a beautiful friendship with. And now he turns out to be my partner today, which is so lovely. I ended up getting it's funny, I'll show it to you. It's actually right here.
Yeah.
Right around the time that I gave my notice to the development and my relationship, everything like that, I got featured on the cover of a magazine, and I ended up actually getting a large.
You on the cover?
Yeah, that is.
Let me see it. I did.
So
Nice.
that was
Tough.
incredible. I ended up doing this article, interestingly enough, on me, and it's a couple of pages long, but it actually was entitled "Out of the Shadows into the Light: Francesca's Empowering Journey to Finding Her Voice." And ironically enough, at that time, people didn't really, not a lot of people knew what I had went through, but even the fact that that's what they picked as the title was so uncanny, because literally around that time, I found my voice. I decided to speak up for where my boundaries were, and having the courage to walk away from those things. And I guess my point to the audience today is that, yes, it's tough to give up certain things, but often we have to give up something great to get something amazing. And I think it's the expression, like, sometimes great things have to fall apart for better things to fall into place. So I think just having the courage to do what truly serves us, and not be worried about the outcome. I think that things will fall into place as they're meant to, but it's so important for us to remember that things aren't happening to us, they're happening for us. It's really easy to have the victim mentality and go, oh my gosh, this has happened. I just can't look at life that way. It's too short. I have to go, what did this teach me today? And how am I going to be a better human tomorrow because of it?
Yes, I appreciate you saying that, because I've preached on that. I've lost friendships because I am so much, especially as a Black male, I hate the victim mentality and I hate how it gets used to hold us back in so many different ways. So I appreciate you actually echoing a lot of the things that I tell people all the time. I try to preach to people. And a couple of things I want to make sure I take away from what you said. First of all, from the man's perspective, I can't tell you how important it is to be friends with young ladies. All right. Put yourself in situations where you're not objectifying them, where you're not looking at them as sexual beings. We're not just looking at them and just saying, if I don't hook up with this one, I don't want anything to do with her. What you just shared with the gentleman that you're partnered with now, I'm sure he is beyond grateful for you because there was a friendship there and he watched you go through so much, and there can be a real relationship. I have actually an episode titled Real Relationships on the show, REAL, real relationships, meaning
I love
you
that.
actually care about the person beyond the objectification of her. And so much of what we are conditioned to do is say, oh my God, Francesca, pretty face. She must be, you know, someone that just gets by on her looks. And then you clearly see that that's not the case. And you can only understand that when you actually make the effort as a man to be friends or have professional, just help her through whatever she may be needing in that point. So I want to make sure I make that point clear for our young men as well, because we're conditioned to do the opposite. I was a victim of that myself. So it took me working through a lot of stories and personal and professional development to get the way I am now.
Yes.
Second thing is, and you already sort of started mentioning this, is what do you see as the next phase when you start building your team and you have people that do all the marketing and a lot of the logistical work for you? How do you see, you know, the speaking world? How do you see yourself growing in the speaking world? I know you already have books out, and I'm not sure if you plan on next one. You know, just go ahead and kind of put all that stuff out there now.
Absolutely. Thank you, Aswan. For me, I would say continuing to do my speaking events, but growing them from not just 100 people, but 2, 3, 4, 500. I'm looking forward to doing, you know, major conferences, and not just like in the evenings, but like a full day conference
Yeah.
with different breakout sessions and workshops and trainings. In addition to that, a TEDx talk is on the horizon, so that I'm really
There you
grateful
go.
for.
Yeah, yeah. I'm actually I'm applying to do a couple myself. I gotta get on the stage, man. My
That's
coach, I have a coach too, so he did 4 TEDx talks, and he was telling me it's time for you to get up on that. So I gotta make sure I do it too. So maybe
that's
we might be on the same stage.
I would love that. But seriously, when your talk goes live, please send me the link or let me know. That is
Right.
so exciting.
Yeah,
I'm
I gotta
very
figure it
happy
out.
for you. So
Mhm.
yeah, that's one of mine. And then I mean the children's book After Loss Came you know, the next phase is getting into, you know, local bookstores, and that way I can, like, you know, do little signings and book readings for kids.
Mhm.
And then the next book is actually called Lead with Grit. I'll see if I can pull up the front copy of it, but that book essentially is all about resilience, grit. So it's
Mhm.
going to be similar lines, but more on a business standpoint. That's the cover
Oh,
right
nice.
there.
There you go. Lead with grit.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool.
And then in addition to that, it'll kind of have that, yeah, that same element of resilience, grit, and, you know, working through certain things like loss and grief and what that's taught me in
Mhm.
terms of resilience for business and leading a team. So I'm really looking forward to having that come out. I also have another book, Aswan, and it's funny. I actually started this one in 2020 during
Mhm.
the pandemic when we had nothing to do but sit at
Right.
home.
Yes.
And interestingly enough, that's kind of where that got left off. I'll show you a photo of them. I don't know if you can see it, but
Yeah, that is it.
there,
Oh,
that's
nice.
the
Is that you on
called
the?
the Unbreakable Smile.
Huh.
So
Wait, does that say
interesting.
invisible smile?
Sorry, the Unbreakable Smile.
Unbreakable smile. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, made me question it for a second. I'm like, invisible? No, I love it.
That's actually a
Uh,
good invisible smile is a good one too. But
Yeah, I like that. Well done. So, long story short, I'm really looking forward to those coming to completion and actually having them in stores and available
Mhm.
on Amazon, of course. But my biggest goal as one is just to impact as many people positively as I can,
Mhm.
both through my speaking and through my coaching, and just seeing where that incredible journey takes. Like similar to yours, I think that especially in the speaking world, it's so unpredictable. You know, you could be making a post one day and all of a sudden, boom,
You're right.
you're
No
speaking on a stage,
preparation at all.
right?
Right.
So that's my gratitude there, is just for the fact that this is a life we get to live. I think it's
Yeah,
incredible.
it is. And what's the best way for people to get in touch with you? Where do you
Absolutely,
get
as
in touch
one.
with
So Instagram is a great way. The handle, I abbreviated my name for the handle. So it's at FRESCA AMANTE. So Fresca Amante. But when you do come to the actual page, it'll say Francesca Amante. In my bio, there's everything. There's a link to my Amante Elite Coaching Academy where you'll see about the grit book. You'll also have a link there that goes to the Instagram page for After Loss Came You. That's a children's book. There's a link that goes right to my conferences page. So for my Amante Talks events. But in addition to that, I'm on LinkedIn as Francesca Amante. So just FRANCESCA is my full name. And then Facebook, of course, with my first and last name. So however your audience wants to get in touch with me, I'd be so honored to connect with any of them. And I hope that we can keep in touch as well.
Yeah, we definitely will, man. We definitely will. There's a lot of synergy, a lot of opportunity, and I actually started following you before we started recording too. So I'm looking forward to keeping up with your journey as well. So the final thing I do to close out all the shows, Francesca, is I want you to use your imagination a little bit. Pretend you are back to being that elementary, say 10, 13, about 13-year-old girl. You're a teenager now. You got a lot of heavy things going on. You're going from activity to activity. Not sure if you even have time for boys, but you obviously are a young lady, so you're attracted and doing whatever. But you have that young 13-year-old girl pictured in your mind. Pretend that she has come into the Zoom room now. Give her some words of encouragement, and we'll officially close.
I love that. What a powerful way to cap off an episode. I would definitely say that a coach in 2018 got me to say in the mirror every day the affirmations, I'm worthy, I am loved, I am enough. And it was about 3 months after doing this exercise that I actually broke down into tears when I said the sentence, I am enough, because I think for a long time, I never really felt that. So my greatest advice to her would be that you are enough. You're not here to prove anything. You're not here to have to show anyone that you are good enough to be alive. Simply your existence and the fact that you are here is proof that you are meant to be here. And whatever it is that brings you joy, whatever it is that lights your soul up, just do that. And just please, like, not that you don't want to be ignorant of other people around you, but nobody else's opinion of what you are doing and your goals and your dreams matters. Just keep pushing forward, and a reminder that it's okay to ask for help. I think that as a lot of young ones, any gender, I think it's just really easy for us to get in the mindset of needing to be strong and always be the rock for everyone.
Yeah.
I wish that the younger version of myself knew that it was okay to just say, hey, you know what, I need a break.
Yes, and the reason I close out the shows like that is because I know that they're multiple. There's a generation full of, my niece is actually 13 years old. There's so many of you out there that are suffering in silence and have a lot of heavy things going on. We were fortunate enough to be in that age without having the pressure of being on social media and having to worry about likes and being perfect and showing yourself off to the whole world. So she spoke to you just now. She spoke to you to just be enough, get through the moment, and just really enjoy exactly what it is you enjoy. That's why we're here. That's why we exist in the marketplace. That's why we put books out. That's why we do podcasts as frequently. That's why we just are here to share our story, so it helps you get through the moment. All right. We went out there, fellow teammates. Continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.
Thank you, Oswan.